Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're exploring something really fascinating, the intersection of Buddhist psychology and modern Western therapy.
Yeah, using those sources you shared with us.
Exactly. Think of this as, well, your quick guide to the core insights from this ancient tradition and, how it surprisingly links up with how we think about our minds today.
Absolutely. We've got Buddhist psychology and modern therapy, principles and parallels, and also Buddhist psychology, ancient wisdom for understanding.
Great sources.
They really dig into the foundational ideas and also look at how Buddhist psychology is, increasingly influencing Western therapy.
So our mission here is pretty clear, right? We want to pull out the most important bits from these sources.
The key takeaways.
Yeah, the core ideas of Buddhist psychology, how they connect with modern therapy, where they differ, give you a really solid but, accessible overview.
A comprehensive look without getting lost in the weeds.
Exactly. Okay, let's unpack this. Where should we start?
Well, maybe the origins, but Buddhist psychology, it comes from the Buddhist teachings way back like 2,500 years ago.
Wow. That's ancient.
It is. And what's amazing is how systematic it is. An analysis of the mind, suffering, well-being, and developed mainly through meditative observation.
Right. So not in a lab, but through looking inward deeply.
Precisely. And there's a more formal side to this, the Abhidharma tradition.
Okay, tell us a bit about the Abhidharma.
So the Abhidharma, it developed centuries after the Buddha. It was about formalizing the psychological aspects of the teachings.
Formalizing.
Yeah, like creating a systematic framework. The word Abhidharma sort of means higher or about the Dharma, the teachings. So it's a deeper dive into those principles.
Okay.
There's a key figure, Vasubandhu, and his work, the Abhidharmakosahasya. It's a really comprehensive presentation. Think of it as going from general observations to like a detailed map of the mind.
Map of the mind.
Yeah.
So the Abhidharma was really about categorizing our experience, breaking it down.
Yeah, exactly. The sources point to two main functions. First, distinguishing wholesome mental stuff, things leading to happiness from unwholesome stuff, things leading to suffering.
Like an ethical guide built in?
Sort of, yeah. And second, it provided this detailed framework to investigate experience itself. And that leads to this really profound insight, the absence of a permanent, independent self.
Ah, right. That's a big one, especially for, a Western mindset. No permanent self. How does that work and how does it reduce suffering?
It's crucial. This idea, Anatman, it challenges our habit of clinging to thoughts, feelings, sensations like they're a fixed me.
You definitely do that.
Right. And the insight is holding on to this shifting sense of self as if it's solid and permanent. That's a huge source of suffering because things always change.
Always.
So when they do, our attachment to this fixed idea of me causes pain, dissatisfaction. Understanding that experience is, selfless. Helps break that attachment.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So the overall goal of all this complex analysis was?
Primarily reducing suffering, practically. And then ultimately achieving complete liberation from delusion.
Liberation?
Yeah. As Rhys Davids put it, Buddhism is ethical first and last. It really emphasizes this practical, insightful look at how our minds work.
Okay, so a system to understand the mind, aiming to ease suffering. Definitely echoes modern therapy goals.
For sure.
Now, you mentioned the Four Noble Truths. That seems foundational. How do they function psychologically?
They really function as a kind of diagnostic and treatment model. It's quite brilliant, actually.
How so?
Well, you have the truth of suffering. Okay, that's the diagnosis. Then the truth of the origin of suffering, which is craving and attachment. That's the cause.
Identifying the root problem.
Exactly. Then the truth of the cessation of suffering, realizing there is a solution, a cure. And finally, the path to cessation, the Eightfold Path. That's the treatment plan.
Wow. So it frames psychological distress not as like a personal failing, but as a natural result of these basic human tendencies.
Precisely. Craving, attachment. It reframes the whole issue. And the solution.
It's almost like a mental health guide from millennia ago. And the source mentions Buddha nature. What's that about?
Ah, Buddha nature. The idea is that our fundamental nature is inherently pure, clear, like a sky obscured by clouds.
Clouds of what?
Misguided concepts, conditioning, all the mental clutter. The radical thing here is that our potential for well-being is always there underneath it all.
Even when we're suffering.
Even then. It offers this incredible sense of hope. It suggests well-being isn't something you build from scratch, but something you uncover.
Uncover. By clearing away the clouds.
Exactly. Through things like introspection, meditation. It's a different perspective from purely deficit-based models.
That's a really powerful way to think about it. Uncovering, not just building. Now, back to the Abhidharma's analysis of consciousness. How do they break down experience?
Okay, this is pretty detailed. They analyzed experience into constituent parts, mental and physical events called dharmas.
Dharmas again.
Yep. So instead of a solid emotion or thought, you see these fundamental fleeting moments, like individual frames in a movie.
Ah, okay.
It helps you see experience not as solid things, but as this dynamic flow of processes, everything interdependent, constantly arising and passing away.
So less like a fixed me, more like a river of changing experiences.
Exactly like that. A constant flow.
And the sources mention a higher self concept, too.
Yeah.
How does that fit with impermanence?
Yeah, it's interesting. The idea is that beyond our everyday mind chatter, there's a kind of space where spiritual awareness meets our physical reality.
A deeper level?
Sort of. A source of intuition, inner guidance. It's a more expansive view of consciousness, perhaps connecting to that uncovered Buddha nature we talked about.
And that idea of inner wisdom, that resonates with some modern therapies, too, doesn't it?
It does. Trusting your own process, accessing inner resources, there are definitely parallels.
It's fascinating how these ancient ideas link up.
Yeah.
The sources really highlight these connections with Western therapy. Where are the biggest overlaps?
Well, one area mentioned is existential psychology.
The big question.
Right. Both seem to grapple with that fundamental anxiety of the human search for meaning, ontological anxiety.
And the idea that suffering comes from attachment.
Yes, and from trying to avoid basic human fears. Both traditions kind of push you to confront these things, not run away.
Facing reality.
Isn't away, yes.
Yeah.
And comparing nirvana liberation with the existentialist idea of inherent freedom. It's thought-provoking, even if the ultimate aims aren't identical.
Absolutely. But the connection seems really strong with CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy.
A hugely significant overlap there, especially recognizing how crucial our thoughts are for our emotional state.
The core of CBT.
Exactly. Both Buddhist psychology and CBT say, look, it's often not the event itself, but your interpretation, your evaluation of it that causes the suffering.
Our thoughts create our feelings.
Fundamentally, yes. It's striking how they arrived at such similar conclusions from such different starting points.
And the sources mentioned a specific example with anger.
Yes, the Buddhist antidote to anger often involves actively cultivating thoughts of loving kindness. And that lines up incredibly well with CBT techniques like Albert Ellis's emotional training, changing those irrational anger-fueling beliefs.
It's amazing. And apparently Ellis himself acknowledged the Buddhist roots.
He did, yes. He recognized that many principles in his rational emotive therapy had origins in ancient Buddhist and Taoist thought. It's like modern science is rediscovering and validating these ancient insights.
Rediscovering is a good word for it.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk practical applications. Mindfulness seems like the major bridge here.
Mindfulness is absolutely central. It's fundamental in Buddhist psychology. And now, as the sources say, it's incorporated into basically every school of psychotherapy.
Every school. Wow.
Pretty much. John Kabat-Zinn's definition, moment-to-moment non-judgmental awareness, that's become so widespread, and it's straight out of Buddhist meditation.
And the research supporting it is huge now, isn't it?
Exponential growth is the phrase used. The number of studies has just exploded. It confirms the benefits for so many issues.
So how is it actually used in therapy? What are the main approaches?
Well, there are several key mindfulness-based interventions, or MBIs. You've got MBSR, mindfulness-based stress reduction.
Right, the 8-week program.
That's the one. Developed by Kabat-Zinn for stress, pain, psychological stuff. Then MBCT, mindfulness-based cognitive therapy.
What's that focus on?
It specifically blends mindfulness with CBT to prevent depressive relapse. Really effective for that.
Right.
Then you have DBT, dialectical behavior therapy, which heavily uses mindfulness. And ACT, acceptance and commitment therapy, also relies on mindfulness practices.
So it's woven into many different established therapies now.
Deeply integrated. It's remarkable.
And it's not just mindfulness in isolation, right? Concepts like compassion are also being adapted.
Absolutely. That emphasis on metta-loving kindness and karuna compassion is huge in Buddhism, and it's finding its therapeutic place too.
Through things like
Loving kindness meditation, compassion-focused therapy, these are direct adaptations.
how does loving kindness meditation work, practically speaking?
You consciously generate feelings of warmth, kindness, goodwill, positive emotion,
Okay,
and then you extend them. First to yourself, which is often the hardest part for people.
I can imagine.
Then to loved ones, neutral people, even difficult people. You might repeat phrases silently like, may you be well, may you be happy.
And this helps with things like depression and anxiety.
Research suggests it does, yes. Depression, anxiety, shame, low self-esteem, self-criticism. It seems quite powerful for those.
And there's brain science backing this up, too. Not just self-report.
Exactly. Neuroimaging studies actually show changes. These practices activate brain areas involved in emotion processing, empathy,
Objective evidence.
which really strengthens the case for using them therapeutically.
Another concept mentioned was equanimity. What's that about?
Equanimity. It's about cultivating a kind of inner stillness, an openness, being undisturbed by emotions but not suppressing them.
So not indifference.
No, not at all. It's
Right.
more like watching a storm from a calm place inside. You see the storm, you acknowledge it, but you aren't swept away by it.
Okay. Maintaining balance.
Yes. It's about changing your relationship to emotions through that mindful awareness, rather than trying to control or eliminate them. It gives you stability.
So you can stay present without being overwhelmed.
That's the idea. It aligns with modern goals of emotional regulation, but approaches it through awareness, not control.
It's really interesting how neuroscience is now catching up and showing physical changes in the brain from these practices.
It is. Neuroimaging is showing how meditation literally changes brain structure and function. Areas for attention, emotion regulation, self-awareness, they're impacted.
Measurable changes.
Yes, which correspond to the benefits people report.
And it's moving beyond just therapy clinics, right? Even the military is using it.
That's right. Using mindfulness in mental fitness programs for soldiers aiming to help with PTSD. That's a huge sign of how mainstream it's becoming.
And the list of conditions where these approaches help seems really broad.
It is. The sources list depression, anxiety, IBS, chronic pain, quitting smoking, insomnia, even things like menopausal hot flashes.
Wow. It underlines how powerful these mind-body connections are.
Definitely. And the benefits seem to go beyond just symptom reduction.
Like what?
Enhanced emotional regulation overall, better attention, less getting stuck in negative thought loops, rumination, and, importantly, more compassion for self and others.
Addressing really fundamental processes.
It seems so.
Now, you mentioned these practices are often secularized now, made non-religious for wider use. What are the implications of that?
Well, it certainly makes them accessible to almost anyone, which is great.
Removes barrier.
Exactly. But it does raise a question. Is something lost when you take these practices out of their original Buddhist context? You know, the ethical framework, the philosophical understanding.
Does mindfulness work best when it's part of that whole system?
That's the debate. The traditional view would say yes, that ethics, wisdom, and meditation all support each other. So it's something to consider.
A really important point. Okay, shifting slightly. It seems Buddhist psychology isn't just meditation. There's dialogue involved too.
Yes, definitely. Beyond the meditation, there are insight-oriented dialogues. These actually share some similarities with Western talk therapy.
How so?
The goal is to help you identify the thinking patterns, the emotional habits often rooted in the past that are causing suffering now.
So talking it through to gain understanding.
Exactly. In Buddhist coaching or therapy approaches, you often see this blend dialogue to figure out what needs to shift.
Okay.
And then meditation or specific exercises to help actually integrate those insights, to make the changes stick in daily life. It's that combination.
Understanding plus practice.
Right. Cognitive insight meets experiential change. It's quite distinctive.
Okay, we've covered a huge amount here. Lots of parallels, some key differences. Can we try and summarize the main takeaways comparing Buddhist psychology and modern Western therapy?
Let's try. Both definitely see suffering as central to being human. That's a shared starting point. But maybe they differ on the primary cause. Buddhism points strongly to craving and attachment, while Western psychology might look more at, say, faulty thinking patterns, trauma, conditioning.
Different emphasis on the roots.
Yeah, and identity. This is a big one. Buddhism sees clinging to a fixed self as the problem, aiming to dissolve that ego fixation.
While traditional Western therapy often aims to build a stronger, healthier self-concept.
Right. Though newer therapies like ACT or DBT kind of find a middle ground with that observer self idea, which is interesting.
Both worlds. And the goals for well-being.
Buddhism aims high enlightenment, lasting peace beyond suffering. Western therapy typically focuses more on symptom relief, getting back to functioning well, resilience.
Though compassion and acceptance are becoming more valued in Western therapy too.
Increasingly so, yes. And finally, mindfulness is that huge common thread. Born in Buddhism, now secularly applied everywhere for all sorts of benefits.
That's a great summary.
Yeah.
So wrapping up this deep dive, what your sources show is this incredibly rich, ancient understanding of the mind in Buddhist psychology.
That's proving remarkably relevant today and increasingly integrated into how we approach mental health in the West.
Absolutely. There's some real aha moments seeing those connections, aren't there?
Definitely. The parallels are surprising sometimes. And where they differ, it offers these distinct but maybe complementary ways of looking at suffering, who we are, what well-being means.
And hopefully for you, listening, exploring these ideas gives you a new lens, a different way to look at your own mind, your own experiences.
Yeah. I mean, think about wanting something so much it causes you stress. That's the kind of craving we're talking about. It's very relatable.
Very.
So here's a final thought to maybe chew on. How might this ancient wisdom, cultivating awareness, really looking into this thing we call self, How might that offer insights that go beyond even the usual goals of modern therapy?
Beyond just symptom relief.
Exactly. What deeper understanding or peace might be possible? It's definitely something worth exploring further.